Howdy folks, thanks for tuning in for another Cruise with Smooth. Before I get into it today, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. If there's anything that you want my opinion on, even if it's something I hadn't touched on before or something I know nothing about, leave it in the comments. I'd be more than happy to do a video on it or give my opinion, even if I got to do some research over the weekend. Hope y'all been doing okay. I tell you what, wearing a medical face mask in the heat at that factory is no joke. The human body loses a very high percentage of body heat through the head. And that's why a toboggan or face covering is so important in winter weather, because it helps keep your core temperature up, because that's where you lose so much body heat. Well, putting a face mask on, especially when I had my full beard, it was just brutal, because that building doesn't have AC. You've got fan systems going all night, fans blowing on you and fans pulling in air from the outside that's a little bit cooler to try to cool it off as the night wears on. But you're talking a building that's anywhere from 80 to 95 degrees on the inside, and then you put a face covering on. It's pretty rough trying to stay cool, because those masks don't breathe very well. And we did have a couple heat-related injuries. I'm not going to say it was due to the mask, because when it gets this hot, you just have people that have heat strokes, heat frustration, or pass out, which I've seen all of that. The other night, there was a guy that was working next to me. He's a relatively new hire. I think he got some heat frustration. He got nauseous. I forget the classifications of it, but he got very nauseous and started vomiting into a trash can while we were working due to the heat. Thankfully, stuff like that's something I've never had happen. The worst I ever got was last summer. We took a vacation down to Georgia, and we stopped somewhere for breakfast. I had sweet tea and coffee with my breakfast, and then we went to a coffee shop later, and I got some really good coffee. By the way, this isn't a sponsor or anything, but if you like Starbucks style coffee but do not like supporting the Starbucks company for political reasons, Black Rifle Coffee, fantastic coffee. Veteran owned and operated. They roast all their stuff before they mail it out. We were on vacation, so this was at their headquarters, as far as I'm aware, in Savannah. And we bought some coffee to go, bought a couple mugs and whatnot, and bought some coffee to drink while we were there, and it was amazing. Anyway, that day I got a little heat frustration. We went to the beach, and the beach head was uphill, like it'd go uphill and then drop back down to this little valley where all the parking lots and everything were. Well, there was a lighthouse we wanted to go see. Go look at this lighthouse, and there's no AC in it. It's Savannah, Georgia in July. And we get climbing up the lighthouse, and we climb back down, and it's pretty hot in there, and I start getting really sweaty and heat frustration, cotton mouth and everything else, and I'm like, I'm having problems. And so we got done there, walked back to the van. I chugged some water and Gatorade and got myself straightened up. That's the only time I've ever had a heat related issue, and that's likely due to the fact that I'm outside a lot in the summertime and have been even before I started working at this vehicle plant I'm at. Anyway, none of that's what I wanted to talk about today. So, now I just got to remember what I wanted to talk about today. Oh, yeah. Ruining it for other people. Now, this can be applied to a lot of the things that are going on in the world today. I don't care how you want to look at it, but I'm going to use a very specific story. One of the things that the Clinton administration did that I have to agree with is he passed the FMLA Act. And those of you that aren't familiar with it, you can get paperwork from your doctor for yourself or a relative or someone that you take care of, and basically, depending on what you ask for, you can get doctor's permission to call into work on an as-needed basis. Now, I have seen at my company the abuse of the system. One of the things that's required for FMLA is you are required to have a certain number of hours within a year. I want to say it's like 1,200 hours, I don't know, and I've seen people work 1,250 hours in a year just so they can qualify for FMLA again. And I've seen some people that when they that they'll call in too much on their FMLA and end up having to come into work for a couple months to get their hours back where they need to be so they can reapply for it. Now, the reason I'm telling you all this is I've had FMLA for various people in my family for over a year now. Yeah, over a year at this point. I've had it for my wife. I was having to help her deal with a few things that were going on last year. I've had it for my daughter, but I've had it for over a year at this point. And the way I've had it set up is the entire time I've been using it, I could call in one day a week. Well, I think I've used, they figure FMLA at 10 hours a day where I work due to the shifts that we work, because we work 4 10.5-hour shifts, so they figure 10 hours a day. And I think I've used 50 hours. So I've used just a week and a day's worth of FMLA in that amount of time. And the reason why I said all this, and I'm not tooting my own horn here, but there's some people that get FMLA and abuse the system. They'll get it for themselves, and they'll have where they can take 2-3 days off in a row, and then they'll get it for their spouse, and they'll get it where they can take off 2-3 days in a row, and so they can use FMLA back to back, where they don't have to work for a whole week, and it's unscheduled vacation. Now, if you want to take an unpaid vacation, by all means, you go ahead and knock yourself out. If you got the money, you do whatever you want to do. I don't really care. But when it comes to unscheduled vacation, when it comes to unscheduled days off up there, it really messes with people due to the way that the manpower system works at my company. And I know that that's the same anywhere else. Well, the reason I went into all that is just to say that every time you get someone that does something like that, it makes it worse for everybody else. Don't get me wrong, the federal requirements to get FMLA are what they are. You either qualify for it or you don't. Like, when I filled out for my daughter this most recent go-round, it was simply a matter of who's available to take her to the doctor's office. My wife had been handling it up until she got a job that was full-time, 40-plus hours a week. And when that happened, she is the new employee. She doesn't have any hours to qualify for FMLA, so she can't be taken off, time from work. So it came down to me, because I don't miss work all that often, and I've never been in attendance trouble, never cropped up on the radar for that stuff, so I had the hours necessary to qualify for it. And it was pretty straightforward. Took the paperwork to the doctor, said, hey, I'm the only parent right now that's going to be able to take her due to this circumstance. They filled it out, submitted it to the office at work. I had a notice within a week that I would be approved. And I think it runs out into the year. I got it set up 2 months ago, and I'm just now fixing to use the first day in a couple weeks. But the broader point of this is, when you have the bad apples, it spoils it for everybody else. Or when you have the boat rockers, everybody gets wet. It was frustrating, because we're a union shop, and when the contract came around, there was one thing they were trying to do, but there's a team of negotiators on both sides, company and union, and there's a team of lawyers to make sure that everything that is done in the contract is legal in the states where the contract, both federally for federal labor law and in the states where the union operates. Well, they were trying to make FMLA burn through your personal time first, and then you could take your FMLA days after, and turns out that's illegal under the FMLA Act. So, oh, come on, pulling out right in front of me. So, and that was due to the abuses of it. People calling in last minute, which the way that they've got their FMLA system set up is kind of stupid. You can't notify anyone officially ahead of time to make sure that your position is covered. You just got to call in so many minutes ahead of your shift, and that's all you can really do. But but when you have people that abuse it, calling in multiple days a week, constantly, this is what you get. You get crackdowns on it. And there was, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. Every day that I used my FMLA, I used it for what I got it for. Example, when I got it for my wife for her mental stability. And when whenever I'd use it, made sure that it was something that had to do with that. If I needed to take off for another thing, I didn't use it. Which, can happen, like if I'm sick or if I overslept, which is exceedingly rare. I've never been late to work for oversleeping. But car trouble, hit a deer one time on my way into work. That was fun. But I'd never used it for anything other than what it was. There was a guy that I know that had FMLA on multiple members of his family, and ended up taking a substantial amount of time off for the simple reason he wanted the time off, and he could. And I'm sure that the HR offices knew good and well what was going on, but their hands are bound by the law on what they can and can't do. Thank you. Well, this is fun. There's a spot in the town where I bank. Traffic just gets insane right here. They've got a light that is too close to a merging lane, and it causes snarls all the time. Anyway, the reason why I said that is, or went through all that, is just to say, if you are going to take an action, don't take it lightly. Consider the second and third order consequences, the ripple effect, the butterfly effect, whatever. Consider your decisions carefully. You never know what decision you're going to make that could end up hurting somebody, even unintentionally. Give you a great case in point example of this. Almost 2 years ago, I bought the car I'm sitting in right now. And I had researched, and I was driving something that had a bunch of miles on it, which doesn't bother me, but it was becoming problematic. And basically, I had gotten insurance quotes. I had gotten I knew what the fuel mileage was going to be. I knew how much I had an estimate of how much the payment was going to be. And so I knew what the total cost of ownership of this car was going to be. And when I went to the dealership, the only thing I was doing is double checking my math. And I was right. And the reason why I was so meticulous is I've got kids, and I wasn't gonna chance anything coming between them and their next dinner. Wasn't gonna chance it. I wasn't gonna chance having to choose what bill got paid that month. And so I wanted to make absolutely sure that what I thought was right. And I knew how much I could afford to spend, and I had worked everything out. And I did all that before I went to the dealership because I wanted to. Did it stop recording? Sorry, folks, if this is weird. I did all that before I went to the dealership because I didn't want to fall in love with a vehicle and end up not being able to, ending up making a bad financial decision, essentially. I worked at a dealership for 3 years, and I worked in sales for about a year, and there was a lot of dumb decisions made in those offices. People would show up and just be wanting to kick the tires or look at the new model year, the new paint color, the new options, which as a salesperson, that stuff is frustrating, but it's understandable. And you show them the car, but they end up not buying. Like I've always been a car guy. Always. I'm gonna pause this. I'll be right back, folks. I gotta take care of some business.